I will just start right away, and I'm very happy to have such a such a perfect crowd in the audience. And on the panel we have very bright brains today on a topic which is a little unusual what we usually do, like machine translation stuff, etc., etc. So today it's about how multilingual knowledge management improves organizational excellence. So if you ever see something which is an abbreviation which is MKM, that means multilingual knowledge management. If you see the abbreviation of MKS, that means multilingual knowledge systems, just to put that up front. This panel is interactive, so I'm very pleased to interact with you. So if you when the speakers are still speaking, if you use the chat function to ask questions, I will have those questions asked for you. And after we had the speakers done their speeches, we are also happy to have you. We will unmute you, and we're going to have a lively Q&A. So having said that, first of all, I'd like to introduce the first speaker, who's Ilan Kernerman from Tel Aviv, CEO of Lexical. Ilan is in the business of digitizing and curating multilingual data now for, 20, 30 years. Lexical is a company that is offering multilingual data and data services to companies already. And from Ilan, we will learn a lot about the DNA of multilingual knowledge or multilingual data, how to map this core data and make it more and more useful to all of you. I'm very pleased to welcome on the panel Lydia Pinscher. She's product manager at Wikidata within Wikimedia Germany in Karlsruhe, which is basically the German Silicon Valley. Lydia says, in order to be truly inclusive and valuable, language data needs to be open, free, and editable for everyone. And I have to say, yes, that's right. So by today, we will be learning how a very large community curates a huge amount of data, and for what reason it's being done, and what value it might get. You might get out of it for your daily work. So this is Lydia, our second speaker, and on the panel as well, my colleague and friend from Berlin, Jochen Hummel, CEO of Corion. Jochen is a language pioneer. He's the founder and developer of Trados, which we all know. Today he will showcase how the data sets of structured data for example, from an ERP system, and unstructured data as from communication channels function together in a unified data model, and what processes multilingual knowledge systems must serve today. Last but not least, from New York, my kind of town, we have Caspar Gradwohl on the panel. He is president of Oxford Languages and the Oxford University Press. Caspar, as I mentioned, works for Oxford University Press for the past 20 years. Caspar led the transformation of Oxford's program from a publisher of print dictionaries, we all know that, into one of the premier lexical data suppliers in the world. And they are partnering with tech giants all over the place. Caspar will speak today about the importance of new words, inclusive language, and linguistic currency, such as a COVID-related vocabulary in optimizing multilingual knowledge management systems. So this is basically what we have on the plate today. So we start with the first course, which is Ilan, and I like to give the word to Ilan now. Thank you, Ilan.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Just a moment, let me select my screen. So thanks again, Arthur. Hello, everyone. My company is K Dictionaries. Lexical is the trade name we started working with. So I'm also from the good old-fashioned dictionary business. And actually, I will focus mainly on language, on what I call the DNA of language. So a bit of background, these are our resources. They cover around 50 languages. We are based on human editors, translators, and others, more and more on automatically generated processes, and orienting what we do for machines, for language technology. We begin with monolingual resources, go bilingual, and then multilingual. Besides the traditional dictionary data, there are resources concerning frequency, neology, morphology, pronunciation, geographical and biographical names, and others. The data part is most important for us, originally in XML, which is very good as hierarchical order for traditional dictionary entries, but then JSON for API and JSON-LD as RDF going into linked data. So when I talk about mapping the DNA of language, basically what you see here are the main labels or components that we are dealing with when we are trying to discover the different foundations of language and classify them and provide information about them. So here you can see most of these languages, and we work, as I mentioned before, in a multi-layer way. We begin with preparing a database of a specific language, then we add another language to it, and another one, and another one, and basically then we try to cross-lingualize the different resources. The idea is to let each of the languages be at the center of the universe and be able to communicate with any other language in that. So just a couple of examples of how it works. This is a traditional dictionary entry, the first sense of the word Gruppe in German. So there's various sorts of grammatical and semantic information here. And this is what goes on in the bottom layer. When we are adding languages, this is what it will look like. So there will be a translation equivalent for each meaning and for examples of usage, which are very important part of that. This is another example from a multilingual English resource. And what you can see here is a semi-automatic process, or the result of that, going back to that Gruppe. But this time, what you see, the different translations here for the German word have been generated through the English multilingual data. So probably most of you are familiar with this pyramid of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, and this is bringing us a little closer to the topic of this meeting today. What I would like to think of is turning this pyramid upside down. Sort of, we are going from data to information, to knowledge, to wisdom. And again, we are in this good old process of going from the bottom to a certain elite in the top. And if we try to turn this pyramid upside down, still, our challenge is to get to the wisdom at the top, but we would like to open it. So the data needs to be very solid and strong in order to be at the structure of all of this. Like when you are building a skyscraper and you need to dig really down underground to have very strong foundations, in order to fly up. So, sorry. Taking this then to our multilingual knowledge management, the data parts are extremely important for us because this is what really connects between the language and the technology, which are there. So it's different systems and processes for managing the data in knowledge graphs, which are open, as opposed to the XML, which I mentioned before. Another thing which for me is connected in that is a certain domain in computer science, the question answering that we are all using more and more. And what I'm interested is, again, turning it upside down in the answer questioning. Now, when we think about, this is at the base of any process of creation and innovation, is not being satisfied with something which is there or having a certain necessity and getting an answer there. And then we feel safe and warm. But then actually at the womb of each solution, there is a seed of a new problem, of a new question. And basically that is a certain spiral that seems to keep the world moving on. I think this is also part of this multilingual knowledge management. A very important factor in that is the cultural factor. Again, dealing with language, we talk about our native languages, and any language that I'm familiar with has a term of mother tongue. I'm not familiar with any language that has the term of father tongue. Language is something that comes like with from our mother's breast in a way. On the other hand, let's say we have a term like fatherland in many languages. Again, these are social concepts and cultural things which are based on certain realities. And I'm just mentioning that as an evident thing about the cultural aspect of language, which should be, I think, more and more apparent in knowledge management systems. Another little example here is our own background is from English learners' dictionaries. And in the UK, the idea of teaching English to the other bloody foreigners is a foreign language. In the USA, which is a different kind of society, English is taught as a second language to those who come there. And for us today, like me and many of us around here, basically English is a global language, the lingua franca. And these things are again changing very fast. Again, a simple example about many different factors we need to take into consideration in these huge systems. So we need to be very sensitive and aware in trying to find not just the connection between words and phrases, but also between different senses of the words and connecting between them. So that is a great challenge of language systems today. The compliance, which we have more and more around, of course, international standards that go in that, and which brings me to vertical domains, which seem to be more and more important in this industry. So, of course, we need to talk about language for specific domains, the taxonomies and ontologies that come with that. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a mishap.
No problem. So I want to talk a bit about Wikidata. And as Ilan was saying, good technology needs to be built on a robust base of data that you work with. And that is a large part of what we're doing with Wikidata. And what is Wikidata? Wikidata is a free and open knowledge base. It's a sister project of Wikipedia. And we are trying to model the world and provide general purpose data about the world in Wikidata. And that data can be edited by anyone, and it can be used by anyone under CC0. So you can use it for whatever purpose you want, no strings attached. Now, what does this actually look like? This is Wikidata in practice. This is a screenshot of an item in Wikidata that describes the city of Brussels. And we have about 93 million of those items. So we are describing about 93 million different concepts. For the city of Brussels, we have its different names in different languages. For example, descriptions in different languages of what it is, municipality and capital city of Belgium. We also have a classification, so that is a capital, for example. And if you continue on that page about Brussels, you will find a lot of additional statements, like its head of government, the population size, or its elevation above sea level. All of those concepts, entities we describe in Wikidata are described by about 8,700 properties, and those are used to make about 1.25 billion statements about all kinds of things in the world. An additional really crucial aspect of Wikidata are its external identifiers. So those are links to other databases, catalogs, websites, and so on for each of those concepts. So it's very easy, for example, for the city of Brussels to find its entry in the YF or the German National Library or the French National Library or its Facebook page if you want to. Now, this is the part of Wikidata. There's also a lovely part of Wikidata, which is its community. All of Wikidata is created and maintained by a community of about 13,000 active editors who are making up the core of the project. And here you can see some of them at one of our recent conferences. And we still had conferences in person. Now, creating this multilingual, multicultural knowledge base that 13,000 editors can edit across cultures in different languages requires quite a bit of finesse. And I want to take you a bit into that, what we do to make this possible. First of all, there are a few philosophical things that we set out at the beginning of Wikidata to make this work and make it possible that so many people can work together on basic data about all kinds of things in the world. First of all, Wikidata is massively multilingual. No one is required to speak English, for example, to contribute. Another crucial thing is that we don't position as Wikidata being about the truth and finding the one true fact, but about verifiability, similar to Wikipedia. So we require references for a lot of the data that we have. Then we also crucially allow multiple and even conflicting points of view in our data, because we believe that the world is complex and messy and complicated. And last but not least, we want to allow a lot of freedom without introducing chaos. Now, how do we do this? There are a lot of things, but one fundamental building block of making this work is our data model. The data model of Wikidata is not simple triples. So Brussels is the capital of Belgium. It's much more nuanced than that. we have references for each of those statements. We can have qualifiers and ranks and conflicting statements. You can see this illustrated in the screenshot, which is a screenshot of the item for Jesus. So how do you classify Jesus? There are a lot of different views on that. And some of the things we classify Jesus as in Wikidata is a deity, a human biblical figure, a religious founder, a film character, a god in Christianity, or even a human. And then we can classify, qualify each of those with who has that view, which body, which group of people has that view, which opposes that view, which sees it differently. What is that view based on? What are the references for that? For example, biblical texts and similar things. We also, at the core of our data model, do not have English words, but IDs. Every concept in Wikidata has an ID, and that's what everything revolves around, to not elevate English above all the other languages that we have, including all the cultural complexity that comes with that. So everything in Wikidata has an ID that is then replaced with a label in your language, depending on which language you view Wikidata in. Another thing that we find important is that Wikidata has an emergent ontology. So the ontology emerges from the statements that people make on those things. For example, with properties like instance of, subclass of, and similar things. We do not impose one true ontology on everything, assuming that we, for example, as a development team, know what the perfect ontology for everything in the world is. That is definitely not happening. And last but not least, we have soft constraints, not hard constraints. That means we do allow sometimes nonsensical data, but then nonsensical data, like for example, we don't prevent you from giving a shoe size to an airplane. Now this makes no sense in this case, but we would indicate to you that that is probably wrong. Now, why do we do this? Because the world is complex and messy. For example, there's this woman who married the Eiffel Tower, and that is exactly the type of things we want to cover in Wikidata as well. So we have soft constraints, not hard constraints. And with this very short philosophical excursus on Wikidata, I want to also let you know that we are now going beyond those concepts that I was talking about, and over the last 2 years have also started collecting lexicographical data. And we're getting to the point where we have enough lexicographical data as well to start building meaningful applications with data collected by just the same community that built the rest of the data in Wikidata. And I hope to see many of you in Wikidata making some use of that data to build cool applications. And I'm looking forward to the discussion with you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. That was pretty good. Wow. I'm amazed by you know by how you're how you're putting together also geographical and biographical data in there. That's pretty cool. And I like the idea of the world being messy and chaotic, because
it is.
It is, yeah. We have to say that. You know, in our brains, it's of course it's not, but you know, outside of ourselves, it's messy, and sometimes also messy inside of us. So, okay, now, thank you very much, Lydia. We're gonna, you know, we probably have some questions about that later, and I'm handing over the word to Jochen right now.
Thank you.
Jochen, thank you very much for attending, and yeah, the stage is yours.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about how multilingual knowledge is now put at work in an industrial environment. And what you see here is a little sample of a multilingual knowledge system. It's kind of a mini Wikidata where you have a taxonomy or ontology with different things. Typically, the relationship is narrow and wider. And on every node, you have a terminological concept, which can have many languages and additional metadata. And as with in Wikidata, you can simply query this graph in every language. So it's not necessarily English. You can do the same in German, French, and Spanish. And what you do with this, I want to show you now. So enterprises are working a lot with structured data, and they're doing this very successfully already for decades, for keeping their finances, their HR records, their orders, and so on. But they link these different things like products, orders, or customers together, typically by a unique numerical key. So that's a very structured, a very controlled environment where every item in the enterprise, every order, every customer, every employee is uniquely identified by a number. But then there's also a lot of unstructured data in an enterprise, like reports, meeting minutes, emails, PowerPoints, handbooks, documentation, and so on and so on and so on. And how do you link this with the structured data? Well, typically this is done through strings. So in the unstructured data, there's a string which says Handbuch for this and that, or manual so and so, or a person name or so on. And then you try to link this into all the structured data. And as you can imagine, that mostly doesn't work because the strings are often written, or words are often written in a different way. It totally doesn't work if you have a different language. So what's the solution to this? Lots of meetings, because that's then where humans have to come in, and then they talk about, that's what you mean. This is the product. We call it like this and that in our subsidiary, my supplier, and so on and so on. I'm sure if people here from industry, they have been in many of these meetings. So one company, Liebherr, decided to clean this up. What they wanted to do is they said, we have structure in our blueprints where we build our cranes, and we can zoom in, we can zoom out. We link these to our bill of materials, so we know exactly which part makes up which crane. But what we do not control is the language around it, and we use language to talk about it. So when we train people, when people call in, when we write manuals, there is no link between our blueprints, between our structured data, and we want to fix this. So they created something like a mini Wikidata of their own crane terminology in many languages in a structured way. So imagine you have an engine. That engine links then to structured data like a bill of material, but then you go through a standardized multilingual knowledge system, which then connects these structured data with stuff like, for example, service manuals or product sheets, but also things like emails or reports, or even spoken language, meeting reports, and so on, so that everything come nicely together. Why would you do that? Well, these companies, particularly if you have these German champions, even if they make have a multi-billion revenue, it's still pretty hard for them to serve a global market because they sell their products all over the world, and then they have to communicate with all over the world. So let's assume there's a little problem and an email flies in from Mexico about a crane, and they have a problem. El tapón de drenaje de aceite, la bomba de aceite se enciende en rojo y el motor ya no arranca. So there's something wrong with the oil pump, and there's a red light, and the engine doesn't start. So what do they do now with this mail, with this message? Well, there are, of course, a few questions about these things. And so which product is it, these people, where we have the problem? And what happened exactly? Do we need to send a spare part? But which part? And is it available maybe already in this country, or do we have to fly it in from Germany? How long does it take to ship it? Can it be repaired on the ground, or does the crane need to go back in the repair shop? Was it maybe a user error? Did somebody do something wrong? So it's not even a broken thing, but somebody operated it wrongly. And if so, do we train our people properly? Or maybe the documentation is wrong, so we have not described it properly. Or is this a frequent problem? Does this happen more often? So maybe it's a product flaw. So there are a lot of questions, and you can imagine that all these questions are very important for efficiently running a business and delivering high quality products and high quality service globally. So how do you answer these questions? Well, you guessed it, more meetings. So typically then an emergency meeting comes together. Oh, we have this problem. You call, what do they actually mean? Which light is turning red? Which part is broken? What crane are they using? And so on. Well, not so if you have your knowledge, your multilingual knowledge, nicely structured in a multilingual knowledge system. Because what you do then is you try to get as quickly as possible from a string to a meaning, which means you take the terms, you start with strings, you have that email, you try to find these terms, which we just mentioned, the bombardier state and the motor which is not starting and so on, and try to find them in your knowledge graph. So you locate them in your knowledge graph, which is representing your company's knowledge. And then you figure out that there will be certain parts in the knowledge graph which are activated by this mail or by the error report. So we know, aha, it's this crane, there's something wrong with this engine, there's something wrong with the oil pump and so on. So eventually you get to structured knowledge, which you then can link to other data sets like document management systems. So here you have the right manual for the problem. The support knowledge base, that's what you do if this happens. Bill of material, that's the part which is broken. ERP, that part costs you so much and we have it on stock in Mexico. It will be there in 24 hours. Machine learning, so we train some language models so we figure out whether this happens more often. HR, there's an expert who knows how to fix this, and so on and so on. So somebody might say, okay, well, I could somehow build this into my ERP system, into my document management system, into my HR system, but we have to go away from app-centric models towards data-centric models. Because if you do this per application, and every company by now runs hundreds and hundreds of applications, well, you get quite a few integrations. However, if you have a central system, a central multilingual knowledge system, which has your data, your knowledge in the central place, well, then all these applications I mentioned before, the HR application, the document management system, and so on, can all access the very same knowledge system in any language in order to retrieve the information. So with a multilingual knowledge system, you can solve a lot of today's business challenges, like globalization, like HR training, like interoperability, social media analytics, enterprise search, or support industry 4.0. Thank you. And later you can ask me a couple of questions, which hopefully you have.
Jochen, I'm thank you very much. I'm delighted because this is how you bring things down to the ground and really point out what value a system or a thing which is more like in some kind of sphere helps you to do your business. And now, before we are doing Q&A, I'm handing over the word to Casper, and I wonder if he is unmuted. I think he is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, that's cool.
And
Casper,
you can see the presentation now, I assume. Yeah,
yes, we can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was a well, first of all, thank you for having me here today, and it was a really helpful presentation that Joachim just gave. In terms of the importance of and the role that multilingual knowledge management systems can play in businesses these days. And really, what's interesting is, over the course of a little over last year, we've compressed probably 5 years of digital evolution into 5 months. And we're going to be figuring out the kind of implications of that and kind of scrambling to catch up, for years. But we all went virtual. And one of the impacts of that is that it has increased the importance of an effective knowledge management system within every kind of business that is of a certain scale, that works internationally, that is, whether it's a government, whether it's a NGO, but in general, all of those cases that that have been mentioned before, whether you're involved in specialist activity, the way that case study we just saw was, or, if you have, and there's lots of knowledge management systems out there that can be customized to different businesses, Confluence and others. There's more and more of these, but then also there's specialist pieces. And I think that one of the challenges is not just implementing MKM, but figuring out how to optimize it. And I think Elon spoke really well about the value of that kind of clean, curated, multilingual data in terms of how that that can be one of the building blocks, one of the foundational pieces for a knowledge management system. And it gets complicated. As Liddy said, language is messy, the world is messy, and and I think that that's something that can be really challenging. And we've talked a little bit about culture, and businesses have cultures as well. And one of the things that I'll talk about now is around the currency and different domain-specific vocabularies that can help optimize a knowledge management system. And part of the value of that is that knowledge management systems are becoming really important in how they reflect the culture of an institution, of a business, or things like that as well. And so not only is it important for the currency of that language to be one that reflects the kind of culture that business wants to be, and that these issues are at the forefront of lots of employees and staff members' kind of identity and then sense of understanding the business, but also as vocabulary and the like changes, you need to keep a system current in order to make sure, particularly in those areas, maybe such as like law or medicine, where there are evolving vocabularies that will be really important, particularly when you're thinking about multilingual and moving back and forth between different languages and how that works. Elon talked about this a bit, and so this is really sort of Oxford's slide that relates to the slide that he presented as well. We have a domain maps and both labeling systems, ontologies, and the like that we applied to all of the units of language within this. So this is, for example, in English, and you can see all of the different components that all are mapped to a particular lemma or something like this, and all of that information is contained, in a system that we have, and then we also link it between languages at the sense level, and that can be really important in powering some of these knowledge management systems, and particularly in terms of any kind of the software development that sits around knowledge management systems as well. And so in terms of currency, and I think one of the things that 2020 taught us, or it demonstrated for us really well, was just how fast language can evolve at certain times. And here are just some a word cluster of some of the words that we had been working on this past year in English that had been really either experiencing a significant spike in usage. It's a new word, a neologism. It's a word that now has a new meaning. And, we saw not just because of COVID, but also so many knock-on domains, as a result of that, have had rapid new vocabulary development. And that's been something that is important to a knowledge management system. And when you think about the ontologies and the structured and unstructured way in which you organize and think about how you search and how you categorize, new vocabularies coming out, you need to do that work. And that's one of the things at Oxford that we try to really do, is to harmonize between languages in that way. So as an example of this, we early on in the pandemic, we built a COVID language hub. And the idea of this was to take key vocabulary that is related to COVID and make sure that we are linking it to the equivalent word in a variety of languages. And what we really focused on was African languages, where sometimes there might, a lot of times, the in those particular languages, they're low resource languages. They might not have a lot of language data available. And so this could be a good resource to make sure that the vocabulary is standardized we're using. And in a crisis like this, you realize also the importance of not just the identifying what the new words mean, but also in standardizing multilingual vocabulary so that the words, you're linking to, there are multiple versions, even COVID, COVID or coronavirus or COVID-19 or, well, that's happening in multiple other languages as well. And so how are we making sure that we're talking about the same thing? And in a medical circumstance where we're talking about PPE, protective gear, well, let's make sure we're using the exact specific vocabulary that's appropriate for another language so that when you're translating materials or when you're in a knowledge system and you're looking, we're getting that information right. And that is really important. I think about medical domain where that's one that's really valuable. Also in legal domain as well, when you think about some of the words that are emerging and making sure that we are creating standardized multilingual senses that can make sure that meaning is communicated effectively. And that's one of the things that we work on in Oxford Languages. Then the last thing I was just going to mention was around currency, where there's been such a heightened awareness around inclusive language and sensitive language around the world, and it's the volume of that attention is different in different parts of the world, and the concerns are different in different parts of the world. But we are becoming a global society that is very aware of the power of language we use in terms of what it means to lots of our identity issues, to lots of issues around social justice, issues around global equality, all kinds of things there. And that's only increasing. And here I just give a couple headline examples from just, last year or two of like, at OUP, at Oxford, we are constantly involved in these conversations. And as much as we're a descriptivist language program, meaning that, what we're really trying to do is record how people are using language. We're not trying to tell people how to use language. We also are looked to as an authority, whether, whether we're a descriptivist program or not. And so we have a kind of responsibility, culturally in English. And so, I think about, and again, how does this go back to a multilingual knowledge management system? Well, that point about the language that you use and how you translate it for your staff members, for internal resources, the way that you all use a hub that might be multilingual, and the way you search it, the way the ontologies and taxonomies and the way that you organize it says a lot, and it's changing. And so, you see here just some examples of some inclusive language questions that have come up, but I think about something like the legal term grandfather clause, and how in English, that's something that now we've decided its origins is in racism in America, and that term now we don't use, we've substituted. Well, that's something that in translation, you want to make sure also, that we're as sensitive to these issues as possible. So we have, and this is hard for AI to deal with. It's hard for, these kind of, so we've got a lot of human editors around the world in many languages who are working on the sort of new words, but also sensitive language and inclusive language as part of their remit, in a way that we have a new monitor corpus that we use in order to specifically work on identifying and understanding the language around inclusivity and diversity. And one example here, which some of the German folks here will probably have more information than me, was Duden recently decided, I think it had to do with occupations, when an occupation we referred to a group of people in an occupation, and it had the male kind of identifier on that, or the male gender, and how they're shifting that in groups, and how something that relatively didn't seem that controversial to me. My God, it just exploded in the newspapers and you heard about it everywhere. And so, and so these things then, the people who are paying attention to this, they're also, a lot of them are staff members who are using knowledge management systems in their businesses and things like that. So, they're going to then see, well, how is that being used in my business? How do we refer to these things? And again, that starts to contribute to the culture of a business, the culture that a business wants to kind of promote. And so regardless of where you fall on this kind of the way in which a lot of people are really trying to drive more inclusive language, whether you are a real advocate of that, or whether you think that that is a pendulum swinging too far, it doesn't really matter. I mean, these issues are really live issues right now, and for knowledge management systems to be trusted, they need to have these kind of considerations and currency in updating all the time the way they think about these things. Less so maybe for something like the Wikidata and things like that, where it's large communities of people who are putting it together. But when you're talking about a business where staff members and employees hold that a business accountable, they also need to make sure that they are thinking about these vocabularies in a more controlled way. So that's really the kind of thing I wanted to interject into the conversation around knowledge management. And yeah, thanks. Hopefully there'll be some questions for all of us.
Casper, that was really cool. Thank you very much to New York. Well, I'm about to unmute everybody so we can have a lively Q&A now. Before that, or while I'm doing that, there's a question that just came pouring in from Konstantin, and his question goes to Jochen, but probably it's interesting for all the specialists that we have on board today. Language teams in the enterprise sit on multilingual parallel data. We probably all know that. They sometimes train MT with this data, and he's asking now, how else can they utilize it from your point of view, the parallel data? Well, you have those years of manuals of product terminology, etc., in multiple languages. So how do you work with that? And I'm now also unmuting all the others. So maybe this question goes to Jochen, and maybe he can start asking it, and maybe the others also have an idea on that.
Well, very good question. Thank you, Konstantin. Building a multilingual knowledge system is everything but easy. If you would start from scratch, it would be quite some work. I mean, and you won't get the budget, even a promille of Wikidata people you won't get. Yeah? So, of course, you can use existing data, and luckily, most companies do have a terminology database, but what they definitely have is tons of already translated material, ideally in some aligned format, in a translation memory format. So what you do is you start with these terms and putting them into a knowledge graph, into a taxonomy, is mostly done in a manual way, but you can also use machine learning algorithms to auto-taxonomize terms. So what you do is you build a traditional word vector model and then try to cluster it, and these clusters then form nodes in the tree. And the result won't be perfect, but it's many times faster than doing this from scratch, and it's also done in a very structured way. So you take your company language, you create a word model, you cluster it, you train it, you train your language model ideally with the company's content, if there is enough, and then you have somebody working over it. Then you have a monolingual knowledge system, a monolingual taxonomy, and then you fill it up with the translations, which again you find in already existing translation terminology databases or by term extraction of translation memories. So by using these resources, building a multilingual knowledge system becomes very simple and, well, relatively simple, and it's guaranteed that it will have all your company terminology, because like in the example before, It's only useful, of course, if it's representing the knowledge you are dealing with in your business. And very often, a couple thousand nodes, 5,000 nodes or so, are already good enough to describe, let's say, the product range of a mid-size machine builder, and then in all languages, and then you can answer these questions which I've raised in my little case study.
Thank you very much, Jochen. Konstantin, I think you can unmute yourself now, and if you're happy with that question, with that answer, or maybe somebody else wants to answer as well. I
think Jochen went a little bit with advertising of his product. I'm interested in like more applications around it.
Okay. Maybe somebody else wants to answer.
I can try. From the Wikimedia side, I would say the best thing you can do is publish it and see what others do with it. Open it up and play with it.
Yeah. Well, that probably won't work in the economic way, but hey, it's worth trying.
I mean, to some degree, we've dealt with this because Oxford University Press is also a very large multilingual publisher, and we translate, and a lot of our work is translated into other languages and has been for years. We have fairly large repositories of kind of curated domain-specific multilingual data. We just have never thought about it that way. What we've thought about it is, oh, well, we've got books that are translated into other languages, and so it's an example of where an enterprise has that, and probably most enterprises that have large bodies of translated work and have for a long time, they probably don't think of that as corporate data, because their business is usually something else, and so. Thinking about that, I don't know how big a revenue stream it is, but there is an opportunity to think about monetizing that, because that's really great training data, particularly when a business is in a very particular industry that has a highly specific vocabulary, so that then that could train an engine in a way that could be really quite valuable. So I do think there are opportunities there, but obviously you've got to get to the right size of corpus, and of course you have to be able to extract it well, which for some businesses that being able to do that when that's not their core competency ends up becoming more effort than it's worth.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions from the audience? None of them. So maybe I will just have one. I'm really wondering. This question goes to Lydia. I'm first of all, I'm really wondering about how your daily work is structured, because it's like everything. So everything of everything. But this is just a side question. Now, is the Wikidata the data of the data of Wikidata? No, is the data of your project already available, or how is that? How does that work? If I want to work with some multilingual knowledge, can I do?
Yes, you can. You go to wikidata.org. And there you can access all of it for years already. We have access, we are a Spockle endpoint, so you can query all that data. You can download dumps of that data in JSON and RDF. You can access that data via APIs. So yeah, you can, and many people do, build large, powerful applications on top of that already.
So it's a give and take of on public domain. Okay, wow,
Yeah.
Wow, that's something good. And maybe my question goes to Elan. How would you see the future of all that? I mean, right now, I mean, I'm coming from everybody knows that I'm coming from the language solution business, so pretty easy business. Now, if you're going a little further, if you're taking the digitalization or the digitization of this industry into a data context. What do you think will evolve from that?
Well, I wish I knew, because this is what we're trying to find out and plan our things according to that. And perhaps Lexicala is our way of saying, look, we come from the old world of dictionaries. When I meet younger people, many of them, they say, what, you still make dictionaries? You know, yeah, but dictionaries are more popular than ever before, but we haven't been making dictionaries for many years, since the early 2000s. What we do is we develop lexical or lexicographical resources. And that is a completely different perspective, because what we need is the data then. So we need to break down everything into data. And that, I think, is a certain common denominator between the language and knowledge there. And then you need to work it out in order to link it properly to different things, etc. And personally, I'm interested in this equation of language technology, of the AI, of how not only does it serve people, but how does it keep us human, and how can human beings contribute to that? So this interaction between the human and machine for us is capital. So we tend to think, because we have a hammer, so everything we see is a nail, and very often we don't notice the screws and other things. We try to find out how and where could this originally human developed resources be useful for machines, and how can machines be useful to making those resources better and more useful, etc. So how can you continue developing this interaction between these factors, that one is nourishing the other and improving the other, and so on and so forth?
Right. Here's a question from Joseph. I will just unmute him. Joseph, you want to speak out, or you want to put it on the chat?
I will speak out. Apologize for any
That's
background noise.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. I just wanted to confirm, what Jochen was saying earlier. We do consult many of the corporations, large corporations with huge amount of data, and it's becoming totally ridiculous. So I just wanted to kind of be a little bit of positive in that direction, because I think this is the real challenge that we're all are facing, and we are going to face it more and more. So I definitely confirm that this is the best direction to go. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Joseph. So we see, or so we understand that we have a leverage of productivity if an MKS, a multilingual knowledge system, is part of the process in whatever industrial or economic environment. Jochen, can you give me a little more about your recent work, or is it also? I mean, you just had this EU project. Is there something to that you might or that you can talk about, or is it all under NDA?
Well, we can always talk about things in more general way. I mean, the thing is, whenever you process textual information, in Europe, it will be always multilingual. And as soon as you stay on the string level, you will have a very, very hard time. And it's surprising how many applications till today try to process language on a string level. So even modern databases have a very hard time finding something if it's not in English, because they are not trying to elevate strings to meaning. So already synonymy, not to talk about multilinguality, always throws out the functionality of the application. So I'm always saying, for example, for the single digital market, if you search for a certain product in your language, well, you will only find offerings in your language. So as soon as you enter a search string, you are caught in your national silo and no common market, single market. So what we want actually is not strings. What we want are meanings. And in order to get to the meanings, you need the base work, which is done by organizations like Wikidata or Wikipedia, because there's a lot of meaning there. But then companies always have to add their own meaning because it's so specific that they often cannot share, do not want to share it. They want to keep it internally because it contains trade secrets and so on. And then you have to combine the two. And for every project where you process textual information, you are faced with these things. Either if it's a translation project where you want to figure out what is the right domain, who's the right domain expert, how do I solve synonyms and these kind of questions, versus the kind of more practical questions, industry questions I've raised before in my presentation. It's always the same. And multilingual knowledge helps you to get very quickly from a string to a meaning. And in theory, when you talk about meanings, you're also language independent. And then you cross borders, then you cross languages. Then you suddenly can search something with a German search term and you find an English article because maybe you're capable of reading English, but you have a hard time putting a question in English. And then many use cases open up.
Thank you, Jochen. That reminds me that I'm really missing our frequent breakfast meetings here in Berlin. So, but you know,
maybe I get the vaccination too. Sometime. Then we can meet again.
Sometime, yeah, we gonna have that again. And yeah, and by the way, talking about the base work, you know that Wikimedia is independent and it's built on donations. And I'm quite an active donor to several entities, but Wikimedia is one of them, and I'm doing that every month.
Very good deed.
So if you want to join me, you know,
maybe
go
you should
ahead.
chip in, yeah, because it's indeed an extremely valuable source of information. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, yeah, maybe do we have more questions from the audience? I would love to hear another question that's not mine. Oh, yes. Anne, go ahead. A question from Anne.
I'll try my microphone. I was wondering about people working in the whole process. So we talked about, or we heard about AI, we heard about people working on sensible data, we have cultures. So combining all that, I was wondering, as being a worker on MKM systems, how is the importance of curating the data, and especially in the field of between what we heard from Wikidata, we have crowd substitution, contributions, and we have people working in companies where you just said, or we just heard, it's closed systems. What is in this field of tension? How is the importance of people working in that field? So I would just like to hear some insights on that. And Ilan was mentioning especially the growing importance of AI. So I was just wondering in that field, how people working in that field. Thank you.
Probably calling it hand curation. It's probably, yes, a question for Ilan and also for Casper, right? Thank you very much. Maybe you two guys can answer that question. And
Elon,
thank you very much, Anne, for that. Thank you.
Elon, you can feel free to go first, and I'll just.
I was going to say the same to you, but okay. Well, I think this is it's not only extremely important, it's essential. I don't want to become a machine, so I'm terrified by the idea of certain AI companies that tell me, look, we don't need you. We have massive amounts of data. And it's true that with human resourced data, we could make it better, but it's so difficult redesigning our systems for that. So we'll get there, and in the meantime, the quality will be lower. And if the machine will eventually have a quality as high as human, I'm a bit personally terrified by that, but I'm, you know, a bit old school about this. So for us, the whole human factor is just vital. We're extremely sensitive of that. We need great experts for the different aspects. Like Casper was mentioning before, you have people working all around the world. I mean, we've been working with people we've never even met face to face for ages, so that's not new for us. The corona now makes it more popular everywhere. We are going in that direction. There are wonderful things with technology, and we remind ourselves that it's for people and that people should be involved there. And I think that's the other side of what Lydia and others are doing in Wikidata and other things regarding crowdsourcing, etc. And we are all very happy that it continues and flourishes, etc. So again, for me, it's the thing of definitely we have it. We need great experts for that, both as regards the language, the knowledge, and the data aspects. And the big challenge is putting it together in a good way. And maybe just adding one thing also with regards to what Jochen was saying, I think that this is indeed part of it, that the actual corpora that is there in everybody's own resources, like also what Casper was saying about Oxford publications. And I think that what is going on is also the customization of that, sort of in big organizations wanting to have their own individual aspect of that. So this is something that I think we will be seeing more and more the better technology becomes.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, that question around humans versus machines, or humans and machines, or how to, we're going to live for a good period of time in a blended environment where the combination of machine learning and AI and human intervention is really going to be critical. But I actually, from paying attention to how more sophisticated neural machine engines are getting, and the ways in which they are the generations of them that are evolving. I'm less optimistic about that human need than Elon is, in a way that I think that it's amazing how sophisticated some of this automation is becoming, in a way that and it walks up the sophistication pyramid, right? So the lower level tasks, already those have been wiped out, and translation is changing massively in terms of, as a human translator, now you're probably doing validation work and clean, and second checking and things. Eventually, I don't think humans have to have much of a role there. I think where humans are going to continue to play is that AI learns on information that's been or data that has been created. And so it is, by its nature right now, a backward-looking, not forward-looking kind of phenomena. And as we all know, one of the best things about humanity is kind of that we live in the space between who we actually are, both the kind of the beautiful and the broken, and who we're trying to become. We live somewhere in that space of kind of pushing ourselves to a place. And AI takes all of the who we are, the kind of broken and the beautiful, and it has a really hard time factoring in who we're trying to become. And so, I think that's where humans have a role to play in all of this kind of going forward. And I think that when you think about kind of the factory worker element of what humans and AI do, AI does all that. Like, honestly, like, in the end, if that's the business you're in, then I think you should be thinking about what's your next second curve. Like, what are you pivoting to? Because I don't believe you have probably that much of a future for, at some point. Where I think that you need to then consider, as a human in the knowledge management process, or development in multilingual knowledge management, is what is it that we want to reflect that is forward, that's projecting forward, that is aspirational, and how does that get integrated into what AI can produce? And I think that marriage is one that will be necessary for a good long time. So that's kind of my take on it.
Or maybe a bit more down to earth. A couple of months ago, we had a value cast here about collaborative AI, and I really like that model. And we run a test where we were taxonomizing a terminology list to create a multilingual knowledge system. And one person did it totally manually. And the other curator worked on what the AI had already pre-clustered. And of course, the one was faster and so on, but also the job satisfaction. It's very tiring to do that, because how do you process a list of terms? Well, probably you do it by order, and then you jump from one domain to the other domain, and it's very, very tiring. Whereas in the other way, you somewhat stayed within the domain, you made little modifications. It's also much easier to split the task over several people. You do this range, do you that range, instead of you do A to Z, A to D, and you do E to G, and so on. So the collaborative approach is great. It's not only producing better results, it's also much more fun often for the people involved in it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's satisfying to be an editor rather than a creator in some ways in what you're talking about. So that collaborative approach makes sense to me.
Great, good. Now that was that was quite a roundup. Do we have more questions from the audience? And if not, I take this as the as the last words, because we've taken a big round throughout the whole domain, and well, and we will be, I'm sure that we will follow up on that within the next month, and I'm super excited. Before I said I really like to learn more, so I learned more, but not enough. So thank you very much for everybody. Now, and
Hello, everybody. Hello, Ilan. Hello. Torben doesn't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Philippe, hi Arthur.
hello.
I couldn't unmute myself. I needed you to do that, but now it's okay.
Yeah. Now we are all hosts, I guess.
Well, you are, but I'm trying to make Ilan a host, and does not work. Make presenter. I will make him a presenter at the very least. So now you should be able to mute and unmute yourself if we can just check that.
I can.
Hello, Lydia. Okay, we have to unmute you as well, or you have to unmute yourself if it works.
How about now?
Okay, it
Oh,
works.
that's much better. Much better. It's I guess it's sunny in Karlsruhe because you're just in full light.
in Berlin, but yes, I hope in a few minutes there will be some clouds where I will list.
Yeah. No. In Berlin, I'm just sitting in the cellar, so I'm, nobody
Yeah.
lets me out, and it's like very dark.
But I actually enjoy it because I like some sun.
Yeah, good. Hey, here's Caspar. Hey, Caspar, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
How is New York?
New York is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like spring is sprung here.
Oh yeah, I guess so. My Jesus Christ, I would love to sit on the plane and go to Tel Aviv, go to New York. I should also go to Karlsruhe. Why not? I mean,
Well, one day soon, let's hope.
yeah. First of all, is the order of speakers, is that good? The other idea would be to start with Elon and then go on with Caspar and then with Lydia. And I mean, what is your feeling? Oh,
Elon, we can't hear you, Elon, but you raised your finger, so maybe you've got a. He seems to have.
oh yeah. Well, he's.
It looks like he's muted. But his mute is locked. Can you unlock?
Yeah, I can do it. I can do it.
Right.
Well, Elon,
Thank you, Casper.
Sure.
Elon, you should be
Margarita.
it yourself normally, no?
Hello.
No,
Okay.
here we go.
Is there
Yeah,
two?
well, I could mute myself, Philippe, when you asked to try, but I couldn't put myself back on. I couldn't unmute.
I was the same, Elon.
So I understand now that I can mute and unmute everybody. That's so cool. It's the power. Hey, Jochen, neighbor. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Now we were just thinking about the order of speakers. Is that good for you? As I said that we will start with Elon, then have Lydia, then you, Jochen, and then it's Caspar. Last not least.
Works for me. Yeah?
That's fine. Sure.
Is that good? Okay. Well, today we have 4 speakers, so I will not do something like a pitch around history, etc., as I usually do. I will just introduce you and then just moderate you, and say everybody, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn.
Perfect.
And
Arthur, I've never used the share feature on this Cisco web meetings. So could I just share my presentation to make sure that it actually works?
yes, please. I think that's
maybe everybody wants to go through and do this once. I'm going to hit share content.
Yeah.
Let's see, screen 1. I'm going to go to my presentation.
That's perfect. It works.
So
Home presentation mode. That sometimes.
Yeah. No, exactly. So I go.
Right.
All right. So you can see that Oxford Languages MKM screen right now.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to now stop sharing.
So, Lydia, you want to share yours, and just so we try that. Yes, that looks good. Okay, good. And maybe Elon now. Just share content.
Okay.
To share content, then you just decide. That's good. Yes, we have to put it on in presentation mode, and then that works fine.
I do. The problem is that then it still goes to the original.
Oh, then
anyway, I stop sharing.
Okay. Then you just have to to choose the other window, I guess. Well, you know.
But
Jochen,
let me see again. Sorry,
okay.
I will.
Just try it. You just take the full screen.
No, I don't have. I just have the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
That's
but
all.
but then you just put that PowerPoint on presentation mode, and then
I did, Arthur. But okay, what I will do, I will keep it.
Yeah.
What I will do, I will do a PPS, and then I will open that.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. That should work. Jochen. Looks good. It's not the presentation mode, but yeah, here we go. So
Yep, got it. Well done.
Works fine. Works fine.
Good. Okay.
So maybe I
So
just
do I unshare.
Yeah.
How do I unshare?
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to go up into the controls at the top and over to the left, and it'll say stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So today I don't have anything to share. I will just introduce you.
Well,
So
here you have it.
yeah, this is good for the beginning, right? Philip, how many people do we have who have registered?
Well, registered is the list that I sent to you, 80, about 80, a bit more than 80 by now.
So we will have 30, 40 people.
But yeah, I don't know how many of these obviously will drop out.
Okay, good. Okay. Whenever you famous last words, Philip. I mean.
Yeah, no, I think we're now a bit early. It's still 5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
I see that there are a couple of people already in the waiting room, but I don't think we should start early.
Ilan, you have to mute. No.
Sorry,
Just
I forgot.
No, that's good. I like Hebrew. So, Philip?
Yeah, no, I think we'll have to wait 5 minutes now to start things. And as far as I'm concerned, everything is set and all is running fine. So I'm happy. Anyway, I'm very happy that you're all here, and I would like to thank you already at this stage for participating in this webinar.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for setting it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure. I'm getting used to it to run that every now and then. Maybe not every other week like I did it this time, but once a month should be fine. And I'm very excited about this content, about this panel, because this is really like a new domain for me, and I'm happy to learn more from you guys. And so I'm sorry.
Arthur, do you think that this will? We have an hour and a half.
Yes.
Figure. Is that right? And do they generally go the full hour and a half, or sometimes they shorter, or?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, usually we have 3 people, and last time when we had 3 people, we went the whole time. So that because we have a lot of Q&A. Usually I will just open up, say some words, introduce everybody, and then we go through the list. The list is that we start with Elon, that we then it's Lydia's turn. It's really cool to have Lydia on the panel. I have to say that again. This is not like baloney, but I'm really excited to hear something from Wikimedia. And then we have Jochen of Corion with the case study, and then Casper from New York of Oxford Languages. And I'm also excited to have you all in there. I mean, this is really a very prestigious panel, I have to say that. So now enough compliments.
you so much.
I'm naughty today. I don't know why. I'm just nasty. Not naughty, nasty. Good. Thank you.
Do we need to keep our video open all the time?
I think, well, if you're speaking, you should. Or usually we do the panel always on video. That's good, isn't it, Philip? This is the way we do it usually.
It's better. You know that you're being filmed, and we're making the movie available afterwards. So,
yes.
You know, if people see you, it's obviously better than if they just see the name there.
Yeah. Right. That's good. Okay.
Right. By now we have 7 people, 8 people that are waiting.
Good. Oh, you just.
We can still wait a bit because I think there must be more coming.
Yeah. Anyone knows a joke?
Well, you're the moderator, Arthur. That's
I always know a joke. No, I was recently hearing some jokes from Elon that we won't repeat, but I'm no jokes today. No. I feel today like joking, but everything is fine so far. Personally, I'm very happy. I'm not only to have you, but I got vaccinated the first shot last week. The matter of that is that I had cancer some years ago, so this is the bad side, but now it's it's the upside of the downside that we see there, and after that I really feel better. So I want you all to be vaccinated, and you will celebrate again.
I have to say, I got my second dose last week, maybe the week before, and just psychologically, it does make a big difference in terms of my behavior isn't that much different, but just sort of your sense of kind of when you go to the supermarket or you're here, just I don't know, it has had effect on my mentality for sure.
Yeah, I fully understand. It's like, well, I miss washing my hands. That's okay.
You're still supposed to do it, though. You're still supposed to do it.
Yes,
yeah, Arthur, there's some good practices like washing your hands that you could continue with after you're vaccinated. I would think that.
Right. Absolutely, I totally agree. Now, so we are 5 o'clock. I think
it's 5 o'clock. So I will now again I will let people in, and then Arthur, things are basically in your hands. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, take care. So several hellos. Hello, everybody. This is Berlin and Brussels and New York and Tel Aviv and Karlsruhe. So, okay. Lot of people today. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much. That's perfect. Okay, I guess we will wait just another 2 minutes and let more people in, and then and then I will start right away hosting that wonderful panel. Mhm.